ask you all a question. What do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement?
I think it's a very complex organization because I think there's a lot of different perspectives on what the problem is, and so that when you have people from all different statures as complex as the Black issue, you have a lot of different, I mean, it's just mixed in with a lot of perspectives, and some people take pieces of that and wipe it across the whole entire organizational, and a lot of people make it political. A lot of people think that the words Black Lives Matter is just a super political ploy created by media or created to kind of distract from what the issue is, and you have people at all different levels of the organization feeling some type of way about something. Some people are on their personal, their personal vendetta with it, with issues, with Black issues. Some people are fed up. Some people are taking it to be more politically involved. People are taking it to be more financially independent, supporting Black businesses. There's all these different perspectives because there's all these different platforms of what the Black problem really is. It's so systemic and so long going. From a historical standpoint, that people that just getting into it or just getting in conversation have their eyes fixed on what the situation is now, and it's new, it's so forth and so on. But I think that it's needed. I think that it's misconstrued in so many different ways because of how complex it is.
Okay. So what I think is that people have to realize there's a difference in the organization Black Lives Matter and the movement Black Lives Matter. So that's where I think some people get confused, and that's when I think we have a lot of problems. So the movement Black Lives Matter, I can't understand why a person in this country in 2020 couldn't get behind it, quite frankly. The organization, I think, is a little more complex, like Eric said, and it's not as clear what's happening with the organization because it's not, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, but it's because it's so grassroots. You might have Black Lives Matter Houston doing something completely different than Black Lives Matter New York, right? Gotcha. But Black Lives Matter, the movement, is something that I feel like we should all get behind, right? Okay. Because why wouldn't my Black life matter?
Right.
And
is Black Lives Matter saying that no life matter, or
absolutely not.
What is that? I want to hear from over here. What do you think about it? And
I had the same conversation, exactly what she said. I was debating a guy the other day, and the same question came up: do you support Black Lives Matter? And I said I am 100% for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
I said, but the organization, no.
Okay.
And then he told me, well, it's not an organization. And so we got into a thing about that. I said, there is an organization. It's out there. You can see it. Yeah.
A website.
Right. I was like, I'm for the movement. I'm not for the organization.
Okay. And why exactly are you not for the organization?
How it's being politicized.
And how do you think it's being politicized?
It seems like it comes to the forefront every 4 years. Like it's being pushed during an election year. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The movement, yes, I'm for it. The organization, like you said, it's complex. I see too much stuff that I don't agree with politically, so I can't bring myself to support the organization part of it.
What politically don't you agree with?
Joe Biden.
Okay.
Any of the
I'm with you on that.
But maybe not part of Black Lives. But I think this is a complicated question, and honestly, so Black Lives Matter, the organization, on their website, they support a whole lot of causes that include things that I think, are problematic for certain people, whether they should be or not. Like they clearly support, the transgenders, the queer community, which I have no problem with that. But I think that when you're asking someone, if they support Black Lives Matter, the organization, it's important to make sure that they understand exactly what Black Lives Matter, the organization, supports. So this is why when I, talk about this, I always want to make sure that someone knows I'm referencing the movement. Okay. Because, I think that a lot of people don't support, even us, don't support the organization just because, when you start having, the founders a few years ago two of the founders anyway, allegedly, because I have not seen them say this, refer to themselves as Marxists, you're going to have people that are turned off immediately by the word Marxist, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to, if you don't support the organization, what is it that you don't support exactly? That's what I was trying to get down to. And are you not supporting the national Black Lives Matter organization, or have you actually looked into Black Lives Matter Houston to see what they actually do and
Stand for?
Right, because I've donated money to some of the Black Lives Matter organizations, but it's because I get behind what they're doing, right? But I understand if some people cannot. But when George Floyd died, I did not understand some people who would not say Black Lives Matter.
Right, and we're going to get into that in just a second, but I think, Timothy, you had something to touch on.
About the Black Lives Matter, the organization that people are giving money to, they actually have donated money to political campaigns. They're very openly a political organization, and they only donate money to Democrats. So they have a specific agenda when it comes to that.
And do you think the agenda only happens around the election years, or?
Yeah, it definitely picks up more steam during the election years. I mean, they've been around and they're trying to do stuff the other times, but like we mentioned before, the larger media companies, they're trying to get views, and they know people are going to be more interested in these kind of topics on election years, and so that's why it tends to become more national news during those times.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I don't think that there's an issue with them backing a political campaign, because if you think of any major corporation, any business that has any kind of stake in a political law or a legislature being created, they put money behind somebody that can that does something. Now, if you get into the political side of it, I'm not. I do not support the idea of putting funds or money into a Democratic candidate or Republican candidate. That's a long list of conversation that goes into that. But for the most part, I do not like. I think when you think in short term, yes, because that's what we can do. But I think on the long haul, both parties have to be dismantled, because both of them aren't doing anything. They're both like they're broken. They're both broken, and too intertwined with each other. They're broken.
What they do is use Act Blue to fundraise, right? Act Blue is not just a Democrat fundraising fundraising website. Any social justice website can use Act Blue. When this has been debunked, okay, they did a fact check on it. They were not able to find where Black Lives Matter, the organization, actually donated money to anyone's political campaign, and they have repeatedly said they will not endorse a political candidate. But I think where this took off is Candace Owens went all, usual Candace Owens, all on social media saying that they, are a Democrat organization, when this is not true, because it was fact checked. They use Act Blue, as do several other social organizations, but they could not find, because political contributions are, they have to be listed. They couldn't find where the Black Lives Matter organization actually donated to, Joe Biden's campaign or Bernie Sanders' campaign. There were other, organizations that donated to those campaigns. So I think calling them a political organization when they refuse to publicly endorse any candidate, like they will not support Joe Biden. Most of them have said as much. They didn't support Hillary Clinton. They said that. So I just think that it's hard. I mean, because they support certain issues, like maybe defunding the police, and this is a big deal, which, by the way, Joe Biden has said he does not support. So I can't get behind that being attached to any political party either. I just think it's, calling it a political organization necessarily. A social justice organization, yes, that maybe supports different social justice initiatives, but a political organization, I mean, is the NRA a political organization?
Right.
Because if we're calling that, they donate to
I would call them political.
See, I don't think they
anyone
are.
that's getting involved in issues that they're a lobbyist to politicians, so that
they do
counts
endorse
as being
politicians.
political.
So
But I don't think necessarily we can call them a political organization. They're here to promote gun ownership and, having your gun rights I get that that's, you know, intertwined maybe with the Second Amendment, but I don't necessarily think that was the purpose in which they were started.
Right.
Similar to the ACLU, because the ACLU will fight for atheist rights just like they fight for Christian rights, but I don't consider them necessarily a political organization. Maybe a social change organization, but not necessarily a political organization. But it depends, I guess, on how we're defining political.
Right.
Yeah.
Because maybe they need some kind of political intermingling to actually get some things done.
Are you defining it by them being associated with a political party? Because I was saying more a left versus right.
Yeah.
Like, the NRA is 100% always on the side of the right-wing side.
Well, they donate sometimes to Democrats who don't.
Yeah, but
you
it's
know,
only
crack down.
Democrats that are less leftist in ideology. And
I agree.
the same thing with Black Lives Matter. They're only going to support a Republican if he's more leftist in ideology.
I don't think they support political candidates at all in Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
I think they support like ideas, like social ideas. So it's like, we'll give money to, you know, this social cause, not necessarily this person, if that makes sense, because they don't have a registered PAC. So it's like, I mean, yes, the NRA actually does donate to political campaigns, so they're maybe a little more involved in politics. But again, like I said, even the ACLU, or, you know, they donate to both. You know, they just are about social movements and making sure everything's fair, I guess, if that makes sense.
Racism in America, presented by The Courtney Hall Show, will return after the break.
I get to interview amazing people who are doing praiseworthy things for themselves and for their communities. We get down to the nitty-gritty, and we have a good time as well. Catch The Courtney Hall Show on YouTube in a new season coming this summer.
Well, I want to work with you because I feel like you're the start of that. Like how we got New York and you got Angela Yee's and you have all these different media platforms and things like that. Like it's important that you're doing this.
Welcome back to a special edition of The Courtney Hall Show. Let's get into our next topic. Do African Americans get their fair shot in this country?
And I think there are a lot of successful Black people. You could make the argument that they rose above the adversity of racism. But really the discussion is how much that racism is embedded in the system, because that's what the movement Black Lives Matter is really declaring, and that's where people really start getting defensive about it. Conservatives believe that the United States was founded on higher principles that...
Sorry.
Just wait a second.
No, I'm listening.
That the founders envisioned ideals that they didn't actually live up to themselves. So just because some of the founders were slave owners doesn't mean that the ideas they came up with were bad. And Frederick Douglass, a great Black speaker and advocate to Abraham Lincoln, said that himself. Originally, he had some things against the founding, but then as he looked into it more, he realized that they were presenting ideals that they hadn't lived up to. And I think Martin Luther King Jr. Was along with that same philosophy. But the Black Lives Matter movement today is saying that that's not good enough to continue to pursue those ideals of the founding, but they want to tear that down and have a new refounding. And I don't think that's ever gonna take place in this country without a lot of conflict being brought about.
I'd like to address that point. So if we go back to when we're talking about the foundings of and ideals that were founded, or the country that this country was founded upon, you have to realize somewhere in there that we were property. We weren't a part of the original establishment or thought of as the original establishment. We were brought here as a subservience, less than dogs, less than human. We were brought here on that principle. This country was founded upon how to capitalize on those principles in the North and in the South. We were 3/5 of a human only for tax purposes. for hundreds of years. Like, I'm not going to go down the historical context, but I just want to kind of lay that down. And when you get to the Martin Luther King, between ending of slavery, assassination of Lincoln, 14 million acres of land being forced to give back to the people that enslaved us, right? This land that we were given by Abraham Lincoln had to be given back by the Confederate vice president who became a president shortly thereafter, right? We had nothing. We were now back into servitude of the people that we were technically freed from, without any kind of due process or any kind of financial independence for hundreds and hundreds for centuries after that. Let's go up to Martin Luther King. So everyone likes to address the "I Have a Dream" speech, right? That was like the pinnacle of his career.
Yeah.
I would argue in the last 2 years before he died, he no longer believed in that. That was 2 years before he died. He no longer believed in that. His last letter to his church before he was assassinated was to talk about how middle-class America is the damnation of the black people. He felt that this country was doomed in its right because there was he no longer believed in the "I Have a Dream" speech that everyone brings up and say, hey, Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King. Like even people who were social justice workers then didn't even believe in Martin Luther King's dream. There were people who did not agree. Like his movement was big in the area that he was in. Far as nationally, it wasn't as big. We were given Martin Luther King as a pinnacle, for the reward of his death. Like, let's make a Martin Luther King Day. He died. Yes, everyone believed in that. Let's make a Martin Luther King Day. Let's give him civil rights. He's died, so we don't have all this rioting and looting and having this country burned down. We don't want revenge, so let's give them this. So I argue the point that you make that we want more than the problem is not as big as we think it is, or we want more than Black Lives Matter want more than we deserve, kind of thing. Not deserve, but
I kind of have a question because I want to know, when you say the ideals this country was founded on, when you're talking about the founders, exactly what you mean by that. I mean, I don't know when you say they want to dismantle that, what exactly do you mean? What ideals are you referring to?
It's the system of rights that were implemented with the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The leftist philosophy today is that there are more rights than the negative rights that the founders established, and that we also have a right to, say, health care or housing or other issues that are particularly the Black community has less of. And so that's become a rallying cry a lot of times. Well, because we have less of these particular things, then the government needs to do something about that. But the idea of the founders was that we protect you from negative impact of other people stealing your stuff, but you still have to make your own money, pay for your own health care, your own housing, and all of those things. Okay. I think that's really more the root of the two sides of the issue.
And I believe in that, right? But so I always look at it like this. Like if me and you are standing outside, right, and the prize at the end of a 100-meter dash is $1 million. I get to start at the 75-meter mark. You have to start back there at 0, right?
Right.
I win the money because obviously I've got a 75-meter head start on you. Are you going to think that's fair? When I say, well, you should have worked harder, you would have gotten there. You should have been faster, you would have gotten there. So that's how I view America. You can't have a several 100-year head start on a group of people, dismantle the world as they knew it, right? Because I think there's a movement in this country now to what I call whitewash slavery. Let's not do that. Let's act like it was as bad as it was, right? Let's not ignore the Middle Passage. It was bad, okay? You can't bring people here, rip them apart from their families, breed them like animals, and then free them and say, now you have the same opportunities as everybody else. Go make something of yourself. I know you don't have land, because we wouldn't let you own it, right? You still don't have the right to vote. You're free, but you can't vote. So, I mean, you can't give a group of people, right, a so far of a head start and then tell this other group of people back here, well, now, because we have these laws in place, you have the same opportunities, fix it.
So would
That's not fair,
reparations,
right?
would
That's
reparations help with that?
Yes, but not in the form of cash. I would never support cash reparations. I know there are going to be some people
That disagree?
that are melanated,
I
that are
listened
going to be
to-
angry with me.
Right,
I listened to an
But
argument
I
about that.
definitely feel like, no, the government definitely needs to make reparations for what they did, but it needs to be in the form of programs. You know, we need to be, because there are instances in history where we were not allowed to, you know, live in certain neighborhoods. We couldn't get loans. They wouldn't, you know, for cars, for houses, buy land, anything. They need to make up for those things. We couldn't get business loans. I mean, so they did things to set us way back here. So they need to make up for that. We couldn't get into certain schools.
Even after we started.
So my thing is, don't give me cash, or, you know, or don't give the collective cash. You make it free for us to go to college where you wouldn't let us go 200 years ago. You know, you give us these loans from these banks that refuse to do business with us 100 years ago. You know, I think people like to go back to slavery because it's so far back and it makes them feel a little better. Like, well, none of y'all, even your grandma, you know, were slaves.
Right.
My mother was born in 1952. I would like you to remember that separate book came out in 1954, okay? The Voting Rights Act, God bless Rep. Lewis's soul, was not passed until, you know, the 60s. Like, let's not forget, the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. That's not that far back. Prior to 1964, it was perfectly legal to discriminate against black people because they were black.